Greetings from the set of Metro and More at Metropolitan Community College, serving more than 50,000 students with over 120 programs at our 8 locations in the daytime, evening, weekends, or online. Hi everybody, Kent Pavelka for Metro and More, on site at Metropolitan Community College's South Omaha campus at the Connector Building. This was the site of the 2016 International Fair. Now, if you didn't have a chance to join us, that's okay, because we're going to give you a tour and show you what happened. Let's go see. One of the highlights of the 2016 fair certainly was the Sukumu Dance Troupe out of Ghana in West Africa. It was a tremendous show. Let's take a look at that.
Show them what is on the gourd. That is another important thing you need to know. Those white stuff that are on the gourds are called pampia, and pampia are spider eggs. I believe you got a lot of spiders in Nebraska, right? Yes. In Africa, when the spider lay eggs and the eggs hatches out, there is a casing. Some people call it spider web. We go and collect spider webs and we clean them and we drill holes on the gourds, and then you cover the hole with a spider web so that when you play, you can hear the buzzing sound, right? And that vibration is supposed to be a therapeutic sound that will generate energy of happiness, healing, and joy.
Bernard Woma is the leader of the Sukumu Dance Troupe. And first things first, Bernard, it's a pleasure to have you here in Omaha and at the 2016 International Fair. And I mispronounced Sukumu?
That's good.
Sukumu Dance Troupe. Bernard, of course, the leader of the dance troupe, and we're talking about the International Fair and a West African flavor that your dance troupe added to this. You live in the United States, correct?
I live both in the United States and in Africa because I traverse between the two continents. I have a music center. I'm still in touch with my family there, and I bring people from all over the world to study this kind of music and art. So and I also teach in the university system. So I deal with the semesters. At the end of the semester, I go to Ghana. At the end of the fall semester, and I also go back during the summer break.
You were born in West Africa.
I was born in West Africa, way up in the rural area in northern Ghana.
I can't picture where Ghana is in West Africa.
Yes.
Give us a feel.
Ghana is in West Africa. Its neighbors are Ivory Coast to the east, to the west, and Burkina Faso to the north, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria to the east. So Ghana is surrounded by these 3 countries, and we're right on the Atlantic Ocean to the south.
Gotcha.
Yes.
How did you wind up in the United States?
The music. As musicians, we're like taxi drivers. We go to where the music takes you. And I've been touring all over the world, and finally decided to bring this music into the academic setting so I can teach music in universities and colleges about African music and culture.
Where do you teach currently?
Currently I'm at Indiana University, but I have taught at many universities before I went to IU, Indiana University, to get my graduate degree. So I've been there since for the past 6 years.
So is it Dr. Woma?
No, I got a master's degree called Bernard Woma, and so from here I'm going to pursue more degrees.
Just take us back to the beginning of your interest in music and how that all came to be.
Well, I grew up from a music family. I was born to play the instrument you saw called the jil, and it's a mallet instrument in West Africa. It's widely distributed in West Africa among cultural groups. So I was born to play this music. I was young, I started playing it when I was 2 years old. And through that, I nurtured myself as a musician in the community. And then in my adult life, I moved to the capital city of Accra, where I could explore ways of music and education at the same time. So I ended up with the University of Ghana in the music department. There was a dance company, there is still a dance company called the National Dance Company of Ghana, created by our president in the 1960s as a way of bridging cultural barriers between Africa and the world. So this National Dance Company becomes a recruiting source for experts from all the different culture groups in Ghana. So they recruit people to go and represent the culture at the national level. And that's how I became the musician there and was appointed as the solo xylophonist. The musical instrument that I play is called jil, but people call it xylophone in English language. So
How do you spell that, jil?
jil is G-Y-I-L.
And it's the same thing as a xylophone?
Yeah.
Exactly?
It's the English translation word as xylophone, but I use the traditional name because that represents the tradition. So in my culture, we call it the jil. And so by being with the National Dance Company of Ghana, I was able to also learn the other cultural group music, like the drumming we did. We did different types of drumming today, and I was able to learn all of that and became the master drummer of the company for 10 years.
You use the terminology bridging the cultural gap between Ghana and the rest of the world. How do you do that? And what is it you try to teach the rest of the world about Ghana?
One way of doing that is to first of all have people get an experiential knowledge about what I'm trying to teach. So I bring the music to people and I teach them physically, and through that we learn other aspects of the cultures, and through that we have personal interactions about how Africa will be. And in fact, that was one of the reasons why I built the music school in Ghana, so that I bring people from here and other parts of the world. After they experience my work, then they want to go to Africa and experience how life is over there. And the school has been running successfully for the past 16 years. And this year we have about 4 universities from the US who are going to Ghana for the summer study abroad at my school. And we have other groups coming from England and Germany. So bridging the gap is a tool of communication. We can use the music to communicate. We can also interact personally at a personal level. And that's how I've started since 1994.
1994.
Yes.
We certainly want to talk about Sukumu, the dance troupe, the music, and all that, but let's pursue what you said a second ago, that you use the music, and I'm paraphrasing here, as a means of beginning an interaction amongst people. Once that interaction is begun, can you, in a nutshell, explain or size up what it is most important you want people to know about Ghana?
I want them to know about our cultural values. I want them to also know about our educational values, because most Africa is oral tradition. So the music is the medium of education, is the medium of communicating cultural values, is the medium of identifying ourselves among the ethnic groups. So once you learn this, you begin to learn, because the music entails cultural values, history, current affairs, about social life, about human perceptions. So once you learn this music and I explain the meaning of the rhythms and the songs, then you begin to understand what Ghana is like. And because Ghana is a diverse country, every musical tradition is different. So if you learn the Ewe music, you know Ewe culture. If you learn the Dagara music, you know Dagara culture. I'm the Dagara. So if you learn the jil doesn't just give you communicable sound. It gives you musical language that you understand why I'm playing this particular song for this certain context. So all of that, including religious practices, all of these are part of the means through which music can communicate. And it retains all this cultural history in the minds of the young people who are learning from the old people.
What would you say 2 or 3 cultural points you can make to educate our viewers about Ghana?
Well, first of all, education is one. 2,
What about it? I mean, explain.
education. Our music talks about everyday life. Our music talks about how we can interact as people. Our music talks about, for example, the dance we just performed talks about equality. We're all human beings. We ought to be equal in the way we think. We might have class barriers, but we're still human beings. So that is the educational aspect of it. And dancers demonstrate that. Musicians demonstrate that through sound and movement, right? The next one is cultural values. When I talk about cultural values, it's certain behavior of the human being. How do you behave in society? How do you behave in your home? What are your manners? So we talk about all these cultural behavior and values that include social control, promiscuity, and respect and gestures. All of that are important to the living of human beings. Then the last one will be history, because this music emanated from historical contexts, and some of them include religious performances, religious worship, beliefs, etiquettes, and all of that. So these 3 areas are the medium through which we communicate our music and dances.
Do you find more similarities around the world in terms of culture or differences?
There are differences, but there are also similarities in certain ways, because for example, you cannot have a church worship without music, because music and worship is one thing and is ubiquitous among all ethnic groups. So or even cultural tradition, when you talk about religion, music is there. When you talk about like funerals, if someone dies, we don't just bury the person, we use music to communicate and share that kind of moment of grief with the person. So for us in Africa, we turn it into a celebratory movement, because we believe that through music that the departing soul can reach where they're going, whether heaven or where. It is through music that will take them through that journey, the sound. So when I come here and I go to church, people play music in church. In my old tradition, religion, we play music, and we still have that tradition up to today.
Well, it's an honor to have you here in a lot of respects, one of which is the company you've kept in the past. You've performed for a lot of impressive people, and you shared the stage with Maya Angelou, Yo-Yo Ma.
Yep. Glenn Bless.
Yes. How were try to put into words those experiences?
Yeah, it is. As I said, music brings us together in a level that we all become one people. When I performed, Maya Angelou came to Ghana, and when she saw me perform that music, she came to me, humbled down, and said, "I would like you to play this music for me to read my poetry. I think it has some appealing emotion to what I'm going to read."
Wow.
So that connects me and the woman right then. So I performed with her on stage for the African, by then it was called the Organization of African Unity. So you have all these presidents there, Mandela and all these people.
Amazing.
So we played for them. And music is, as I talk about, some of the music we play are praise singing. You praise to welcome people, important dignitaries into your life. So for us in Ghana, we have factored that through the National Dance Company of Ghana into the cultural fabric of the people. So when the politicians sit down, like the Congress convene, they bring musicians to play musical poetry to advise them on the feeling of the country, on what people are feeling about. And we believe that when music is communicated to people, they take it serious than somebody talking with their mouth. So when Clinton was coming, we had these huge national drums as the welcoming musical instrument. And I was the one who played those instruments to welcome Bill Clinton.
And this was at the same event?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the drum was so massive, he couldn't even stand afar. He had to come close and said, "What is that drum made out of?" I said, "It's made out of an elephant skin." Because the circumference of the drum is like 20 feet, 20 centimeters. It's huge.
And you performed for Queen Elizabeth?
Performed for Queen Elizabeth.
Where was that?
Ghana, too. When she came to Ghana on a state visit, I played the welcoming music for her. and get to meet her. So, and I thought when Obama came to Ghana in 1999, the U.S. Embassy hired me to teach Obama's children African music so that they can understand the concept of music and culture. So I taught them and got to meet them and meet Michelle Obama.
How much time did you get to spend with them?
Oh, I spent the whole day with them.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
That's great. What would you like the audience, what were you trying to tell the audience here at Metropolitan Community College at this event, and what would you share with our viewers in closing?
I want people in contexts like this, in festival situations like this, to break barriers, to meet, to interact, whether musically or just personally. You know, you and I are talking now. So through this medium, we can understand each other's music, we can understand each other's culture, we can also socially interact and understand each other better. So when we come here, we are displaying this kind of interaction through music and dance. And even the costume we wear demonstrate that this is how we dress in our culture. You have different colorful dresses and fabric. That shows the different cultures, the different ethnic groups that live in Ghana. So in situations like that, I want people to break barriers and interact and get to understand each other as well. I mean, how many people do you get people coming to Nebraska all the way from Ghana?
Exactly, exactly. Well, that's the point of the International Fair, what you just said. And speaking of clothing, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
How about this? We were sharing, getting to know each other. All seriousness, thank you very much for being here.
It is a pleasure.
Very good. Bernard Mwoma.
Thank you.
You'll be surprised at what you see at the International Fair every year at MCC. This year, unexpectedly, a little hip hop. Will Thorin is a photographer, a musician, and a didgeridoo.
Didgeridoo.
Didgeridoo crafter. Will is out of Los Angeles, California. It's a pleasure to have you here at the MCC International Fair. I don't know if I'm going to try to say it again or not.
Didgeridoo.
Didgeridoo.
You got it.
So, besides learning how to say it, maybe you can explain to our viewers what it is.
All right.
Didgeridoo.
Didgeridoo is from Australia. It's from the Aboriginal people of Australia. And didgeridoo is actually a name that came later on after Europeans settling the country. Yadaki is one of the traditional words. Mago is another traditional word, and there are various other traditional words for the instrument. But didgeridoo is the word we know it as around the world now.
Is it known as didgeridoo there?
Yes, there as well. But that name doesn't come from the Aboriginal people. That name came. There are various stories about where that name actually comes from.
What is the brief history of it?
Nobody knows exactly how old it is. Some people say it's 40,000 years old. Some people say it's only 2,000 years old because that's the record. So nobody really knows. But it's been used for the Aboriginal people as a ceremony tool and a way to. It's almost in a way like a spoken language, like syncopated rhythms that mean different things. So they can hear a certain rhythm and actually understand a meaning behind it, much like you would understand a sentence that's coming out of my mouth. So it's a healing tool, a ceremony tool of music. It's usually a music tool, and it's usually accompanied by clapsticks, which is the kind of like two wooden sticks they hit together, and singers. singing, dancing, clapsticks, and didgeridoo. That's usually.
How does one understand what the message is?
Just like you would learning English and growing up inside of it and figuring it out. That's kind of, to me, how you would learn. You can try to learn as an outsider of that culture, to go and study the different rhythms and the different meanings behind it. As far as I know, it's very complex, but it's totally possible.
Do you understand it?
I don't understand it.
Have you tried, or are you going to?
I've been to Northeast Arnhem Land, which is kind of the richest center of what has a lot of the tradition remaining for Yidaki, which is one of the traditional types of didgeridoo. And it occurred to me as so complex that it actually pushed me to pursue contemporary styles of playing more, because I felt like if I wasn't going to invest my full energy into learning that language as I saw it, that I shouldn't try to mimic a language that I don't understand.
I got you.
I've still learned a lot of techniques from that language that I use in my music.
But you don't know what you're saying.
Right. I'm speaking a different language.
But you invented the multi-drone.
So the multi-drone
didgeridoo.
Yes.
And you came up with that?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
In the brass world, there's something called a pedal tone, and it's when you play an octave below a natural note. And I figured out that was possible in the didgeridoo without knowing anything about the brass world, because I'm first a didgeridoo player. So I renamed it multi-drone. But then after studying brass technique more, I realized it's actually something different, because it's the same phenomenon that you can play basically lower notes, an octave below the natural notes in the instrument. But the shape of the lips when you play it on a tuba versus when you play it on a didgeridoo, the didgeridoo is a little bit more inverted, which produces like a juicier sound. The sound is richer when you have your lips a little bit more inverted.
The embouchure.
The embouchure.
Yeah.
And so it's something a brass player wouldn't like in their sound. And so I'm exploring pedal tones or false tones also in the didgeridoo, which is a brass phenomenon that I'm the first person to really dive deep into in the didgeridoo world.
You have a music background before this, right? I assume.
Just choral singing.
No instruments.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what drew you? What was the draw?
My
for
brother
you?
randomly saw didgeridoo on National Geographic Channel when I was 11 and bought this bamboo one. And then a friend of mine taught me how to circular breathe, and I just got hooked playing it. Eventually, through family connections, I got hooked up with this Aboriginal player who plays with the Sydney Orchestra. His name's William Barton. And he, in a funny way, convinced the Sydney Orchestra to pay me to be his roadie. And I toured with him around Australia for 3 months. And that was kind of the tipper that made me consider being a professional didgeridoo player. Because I was mainly a photographer before that.
Yeah. So explain what you did here at the International Fair, what your presentation was, what
Mainly
do you do?
Talking a little bit about the tradition, and then my thing is bringing didgeridoo into hip hop, funk, rock music, contemporary music that I grew up listening to. I want to bring the instrument to that. And so I'm designing tuned instruments to play multi-drone, which is just, rather than playing the drone note and the several notes above it that you normally hear with a didgeridoo, I can play an extra 5 to 12 notes depending on the instrument, and mixing that with funk, rock, hip-hop music. So here I'm freestyling, basically.
And you got just yourself, or yourself?
Yeah, I normally play with a group called Garangatang, which is funk hip-hop with the grandson of George Clinton.
Yeah.
He's a rapper.
Sure.
And he raps over me playing, but here I'm just doing solo.
How's it going over? I mean, you've got this ambition to make this more mainstream in that context.
Are
you making progress?
It's fun, yeah.
I mean, people like it.
Yeah. It's kind of a combination of spreading, playing multi-drone is It's almost double the size mouthpiece of a normal didgeridoo, which is what enables you to have room to lower your embouchure, your lip vibration down to a lower octave. So it's a combination of spreading that technique and that playing style to the didgeridoo community so that I can be inspired by other people playing this thing. I'm not the only one playing this thing. And then also just experimenting with contemporary music and how to fit inside a band context.
Yeah, didgeridoo community, you use that term.
Yes.
But what would the Australian, the traditionalists, didgeridoo community think of what you do?
It really depends. I mean, you get, just like in any culture, you get very open-minded people and very not so open people.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of mixed things, but I've learned a lot of what I know from William Barton and then also going to Arnhem Land. That was kind of the beginning for me. The way I play now is very different from what I traditionally learned, but yeah, I don't know. I'm constantly referencing back to the source and trying to learn more from how it's been used for thousands of years, while trying to keep it playing what works best for a modern contemporary.
What's your ambition? I mean, are you doing records, or you want to do it?
Yeah. I toured with George Clinton for a couple of years as his photographer, and then started playing didgeridoo with the band, and that's how Garangatang started with his grandson. But we're putting out, YouTube videos, albums.
So Google Will Thorin?
Yeah,
Okay.
Wet Didgeridoo is my instrument brand.
Okay.
And kind of my default solo performing name is Wet Didgeridoo, like water. It's my initials, William Edwards Thorin.
Very good. This being an international fair, this would have a little international flavor to it, but certainly a contemporized international treatment. What's your feeling about the tremendous variety of music around the world and all that constitutes entertainment?
It's awesome right now to be able to go on YouTube and be inspired by so much stuff. I feel like we have access to more than we ever did before. I look at didgeridoo, contemporary didgeridoo right now, at least didgeridoo being used in like rock and roll, funk, hip hop, electronic, whatever, as kind of like the guitar in the 30s to the 60s, where it kind of went through this evolution, and now
you're a Jimi Hendrix didgeridooer, right?
Hopefully, maybe that can be one of that part. I don't think the didgeridoo scene has made it far enough to have a Jimi Hendrix yet.
Yeah.
But I feel like.
But the jump from the 30s to the 60s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I feel like with the web, it's possible for that jump to happen faster. So maybe it will happen in the next 5-10 years, where you'll see that kind of playing. But there's so much technical exploration in the contemporary didgeridoo world, like applying beatbox techniques, tuba techniques, that we're really evolving very fast as a community. And so yeah, I think it's like we're gonna have that technical evolution the guitar had from 30s to the 60s, probably before the 30s too. But that new movement of it, I think it's going to happen kind of in the next 10 years with didgeridoo.
So folks who didn't get a chance to come to the fair and hear what you do, the Google, to get a feel for it online, what would be the best Google?
Wet Didgeridoo.
Wet Didgeridoo.
Yeah.
I know while you were here in Omaha, you did a workshop at Beveridge Middle School.
Yeah.
Explain what you did there.
I taught kids how to make PVC pipe instruments. I learned on my brother bought the bamboo one when I was 11, but he wouldn't let me take it anywhere because it was his. So I made one out of PVC pipe, and then I started making them out of, which is, you just take a PVC pipe 4 feet long and put some wax on the top to make the mouthpiece more comfortable, and then that's a didgeridoo, basically.
Wow.
That's a basic didgeridoo. And I learned.
Well, you got to cut a hole in it somewhere, don't you?
No,
you're on the end of it?
Yeah, you're just playing to the end of it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a basic didgeridoo. So I learned on that for 6 years before. I didn't have any teachers. I was just kind of like figuring it out before I met anybody.
So the analogy might be learning how to whistle with your fingers. I mean, it's you just blow through the end of it.
I mean, every didgeridoo is just a hollow tube
Yeah.
of a different shape.
So you can't go buy a didgeridoo at a music.
You can now.
Yeah.
But I started in the year 2000, and actually, yeah, even Guitar Center and places like that had didgeridoos back then. But they're not as. It's hard to find a really good playing didgeridoo in a normal music shop.
What was the interest level of the students at Beveridge?
Really high.
Was it?
Yeah.
I mean, is this something a lot of younger folks are
I'm hoping
interested
so.
in? Yeah, that's your mission, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you hip hop is almost pop nowadays. Electronic music and hip hop music.
Right.
And that's kind of the style I play, and kids seem to be most attracted to that style of playing when I present to a school or something, versus something a little more traditional, because they can relate to it. It's the music that they're surrounded by constantly. So, yeah, they were mostly inspired by that angle of it, I think.
Will, how much of what you do is performing for entertainment versus presenting in venues such as the International Fair? Because I'm sensing that one of the things you want to get done is educate people about all this.
I'd say like 40% of what I do is teaching or presenting of some sort. The music's very new in the U.S. culture, for sure. So, I mean, the instrument itself, not many people know about it, but people are starting to more and more know about it. So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for people wanting to learn more. It's funny being an American didgeridoo player, and I often get hired to events that are related to Australia. And
They don't know what they're getting, do they?
well, I mean, they're just looking for somebody local that they can actually get.
Yeah.
If you want to learn, actually, if you want to learn about the real traditional stuff, there's a great website called ididj.com, spelled I like iPhone, IDIDJ. If you type in IDIDJ Australia, iDidj Australia, you'll find a lot of information about Northeast Arnhem Land and Western Arnhem Land, styles of playing, and the different Aboriginal elders and icons of that world. That super interesting stuff.
Appreciate you being here, Will. Thanks for being at the
you.
fair and for educating me on how to pronounce didgeridoo.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Will Thorin. A number of people became U.S. citizens at the 2016 International Fair. We got the highlights. Let's take a look.
Maria Berta Hernandez de Recinos, El Salvador. Jose de la Cruz Cortez Espinoza, Nicaragua. Abdul Rahman Hadid Bakari, Somalia.
Together, we are a nation united not by any one culture or ethnicity or ideology, but by the principles of opportunity, equality, and liberty that are enshrined in our founding documents. Today marks a very special day in your life. You've traveled a long path to get here. You've sworn a solemn oath to this country, and now you have all the rights of citizenship. With the privileges of citizenship, though, come great responsibilities. And so I ask that you use your freedoms and your talents to contribute to the good of our nation and the world.
Bill Connor is with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, the Omaha Field Office Director. It's a pleasure to have you at the International Fair.
Thank you.
You bet. Some folks became U.S. citizens with your assistance today, right?
Yeah, we had 37 applicants for naturalization from over 20 countries around the world. And it was a really nice ceremony and very appropriate for this international fair that they're having here at Metro.
You bet. 37 became citizens?
37 new citizens today at the ceremony.
Well, you call them applicants.
Well, they were applicants for citizenship, and they were approved for citizenship prior to the ceremony. But generally, I call them applicants because they had to apply to become a citizen. Now they're citizens,
right?
Is what I would call them.
Sure. So. Well, after their, what is it, a swearing in, or what is it?
Yeah,
an
they
oath?
have to take the oath of allegiance. And you know, everybody is required to take that oath before they can actually become a citizen. These people have probably been approved for several weeks or maybe a month, before the ceremony, but until they take the oath, they are not a citizen.
What's the process? I think folks would be interested in knowing.
Well, generally, you have to be admitted to the United States as a lawful permanent resident, which would be, in common terminology, that would be somebody with a green card. And you generally have to have 5 years residence as a lawful permanent resident, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you had good moral character. There are some exceptions where we don't require somebody to have 5 years of lawful permanent residence. That would be cases where somebody served in the U.S. military, or they've married a U.S. citizen. They can get their citizenship in a shorter period of time. Like with the married to a U.S. citizen, they can do it in 3 years.
3 instead of 5.
Yes.
Is there an educational process that goes along with this, or something that they've got to do besides put the time in?
Well, besides putting the time in, they have to show that they have a good moral character, that they haven't gotten in any trouble while they're in the United States or within the last 5 years. They also have to study and be prepared to take the civics test, English writing test at their interview. And that can be pretty hard. There can be over 100 questions.
Wow.
And it can range from anything like how many senators per state to who's your congressman. Which a lot of times a native-born U.S. citizen might not be able to answer some of these questions.
That's just what I was going to say, Bill. I mean, how many of those? How many questions are there? How did you say 100?
Well, the questions are random, but they have to get six correct out of 10.
6 out of 10.
Yes.
Okay. And it's kind of
But-
like a ballot. If
Yeah.
you don't know which 10 you're going to
Yeah,
get.
you don't know which out of the 100 questions that you're going to get.
Or a
for your
driver's
10.
license test. Yeah, you got to know
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah, you have to know it all. And on a typical day, sometimes we'll have 40 applicants that will be tested in the morning, and only 20 will pass.
Wow.
So it's not a easy test by any means.
So there's 10 questions based on what is there a number of how many what's the breadth of knowledge you have to have? Is it 100 topics or what?
No, it's basically U.S. civics, history.
Civics.
It can range from everything from the colors of the flag to who the president of the United States is.
I guess what I'm getting at is how does one prepare for this?
Oh, well, if you go to uscis.gov, on our website we have a lot of the sample tests. You can also come into our office. We have flashcards that we give to people, so that they can study. I think that's one of the best ways is to study off of the flashcards that we have. And you can also print the flashcards off on the internet.
Off the computer, yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of your office, where are you located?
Oh, we're right by the airport. We're 1717 Avenue H, right off of Abbott Drive, on your way to the airport from downtown.
When do folks start to prepare for this test, knowing that they've got 5 years or 3 years or whatever the case may be?
I can tell you that my personal experience was my wife is from Canada, and she started studying probably 2 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
Of course, she didn't have really a big language barrier, but she studied all 100 questions, and she would take those flashcards out and quiz some of our neighbors who were born here, and they couldn't get all of the answers right. So.
I wish you'd have brought a sample test to see how many I could get.
I wish I would have too. But
Well, give me some of the questions that I might run into.
who wrote the Star Spangled Banner?
Well, got to get 6 out of 9 now.
Okay.
I don't know.
How many electoral votes, or how many congressmen are there in the Congress?
I thought you were going to say in Nebraska.
Yeah.
435.
Yeah.
Got that.
Got that one.
What was the answer to the other one?
Let me see. Not quite sure myself.
I'm almost glad you didn't bring the test now.
Yeah.
I was 1 for 2. You say 37 became citizens
Yes,
today.
37 new citizens.
What is the? Give us a feel for how many folks you deal with, and what you said on a
Well-
given day? You open every day, or how's that
Yeah,
work?
we're open every business day. Generally, maybe 3 of those days will be devoted to naturalization interviews, 3 to 4 of those days. And what we do a lot of times is we'll have the applicants will come in, and they'll come in from all over Nebraska and then western Iowa. And so they'll come in, and a lot of times they'll be tested and they'll be interviewed. And if they pass, sometimes we'll naturalize them right there in our office in the afternoon in a ceremony. Actually, I have another ceremony at 2 o'clock at my office for whoever passed their interviews today. So, they come in, they take the test, and then they naturalize in the office, or sometimes they go to a special ceremony like the one that we had here.
Well, your choice. If you've passed, you can.
A lot of times it's the applicant's choice, and it's a really good servicing, because if the person's from Schuyler or way out in western Nebraska, they only have to drive in once. They
Right.
don't have to take another day off of work.
Right.
So it's kind of their convenience, but it's really nice to have these ceremonies out in the community, because it kind of it promotes citizenship and gets people thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, immigration is a hot topic these days.
Yes.
I mean, this is a great opportunity. What's your feel for the current dialogue and discourse?
Well, not really ever prepared to talk about those other issues, like what's going through Congress or what's going through the legislature.
The politics, yeah.
I do like to talk about the naturalization, the process, what we do here in Omaha at the Omaha field office. But I'm a civil servant, so
Sure, I understand. Now, so how many citizens become naturalized in your office on a given year?
In a given year, it can be anywhere from probably 2,500 to 4,000, depending on the year. This year, we're seeing a major uptick in citizenship applications. We've actually had to devote probably a couple more days a week towards naturalization over other types of applications, because we're just seeing a big increase in applications.
What's the reason for that?
Well, it's a lot of times around election years, people are, somebody could have been a permanent resident for 20 years, and he's watching the TV and he says, I really should be able to vote. I really want to vote this time. And he'll finally put in his application to become a citizen because of that. So in an election year, a presidential election year, you do see an increase in naturalization applications.
What beyond being able to vote does being naturalized allow you to do?
Well,
because you can't stay forever with your green card, right?
Well, once you're granted permanent residency, you can stay in the United States as a permanent resident as long as you don't get any trouble that would create a situation where you might be ordered deported.
Gotcha.
So if you're a permanent resident, you can always be, there's that chance that if something happens where you get into some trouble, you might be deported. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're a U.S. citizen generally for the rest of your life, unless the U.S. government finds that you've got that citizenship through some sort of fraud, they can take it away. But for the most part, you're a citizen. You can get a U.S. passport. You can travel on that passport, which is very important. And a lot of people come from countries where visas are required all around the world.
Sure.
And if they get a U.S. passport, there's a lot of countries where you're visa exempt, so your travel opens up quite a bit if you're a U.S. citizen.
Talk a little bit about the emotions that folks experience when they become naturalized.
Well, that's probably one of the best parts of the job. Like today, I was shaking the hands of these 37 applicants and handing them their certificates, and some people would have tears in their eyes. Some gentlemen would almost take my arm off because they're so happy, and I've always got to be prepared for that big guy who comes across that looks real happy.
With the vice grip shake, yeah.
So I mean that's a great part of my job, because I'm usually the first one to shake their hand and say congratulations. And it can be a range of emotions. I talked to one gentleman. I can't remember his name, but he was number 16, and I identified him because he had put in his application through the military because he was a veteran. So I went up and talked to him, and he had served back in the late 80s, early 90s at Fort Bragg. He was airborne, so I talked to him a little bit, but he had been a permanent resident for all that time, and now just this year he's becoming a citizen, but he had already served 4 years in the U.S. Army.
Any idea why he didn't do it before?
A lot of times it's I've been meaning to get around to it, but I just haven't gotten to it. I remember the situation with my wife. She was a very proud Canadian, and she wasn't always real set on it. But then after she was here a while, she knew that she's probably never going back to Canada, other than to visit her parents. And this is what became her home, so she decided to become a citizen.
Well, when you become naturalized, that doesn't mean you have to give up your other citizenship, does it? Or does it?
Well, when you take the oath of allegiance, we ask you to renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince,
I did not know that.
state, or sovereignty of whom or which you have heretofore ever been a subject or citizen. So,
But you hear of dual citizenship.
well, that's a little bit of a difficult issue, because if you become a U.S. citizen, the United States will only recognize you as a U.S. citizen. If you carry passports from other countries, that's between you and that country. But for consular notification purposes and things like that, we will recognize you as a U.S. citizen. And there's been some Supreme Court cases, that relate to that back in the '60s, that relate to whether you actually have to give up your passport from your previous country.
Bill, thanks for being with us and being at the International Fair. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks.
Bill Connor with the U.S. Naturalization and Immigration Services Omaha Field Office. Talk about diversity. We had diversity at the 2016 International Fair, including this performance by Kankles from Lithuania. Talk about diversity. We had it at the 2016 MCC International Fair, including this performance by the Urban Native Youth Dancers. Some very interesting history of South Omaha told in pictures was presented at the 2016 fair from Scott Working and Susan Trinkle.
The shop was styled like an old soda shop from the 1950s in the golden age of America. I was sure the coolers and light fixtures and everything else had been the original furniture of the place, but it all ran well and needed no repairs during my time there, so I thought very little further of it.
Why is mankind so obsessed with perfection? Ever since the beginning of time, mankind has sought and groped for being perfect. Being a perfect parent, a perfect artist. Everything we as humans look at seems to demand perfection.
One of the presentations I enjoyed the most at the 2016 International Fair was one entitled Stories from South Omaha. South Omaha's history told in pictures, and doing the honors at that presentation, MCC's Scott Working and Susan Trinkle. Very impressive.
Thank you.
I want to share a little bit about what you guys did. What was the objective?
Well, here at South Omaha, there are a lot of wonderful historical photographs telling the stories of South Omaha, you know, the stockyards, the downtown. And we had 5 Metro students choose one of the photos and write some creative piece of writing based on it. We kind of opened it up to whatever genre they would like, whether it's a short story, an essay, or a poem. We have a poem also. And just let them kind of run with it.
So there were 5 photos total?
That's correct.
Yeah, I saw part. I didn't see the whole thing, but each presentation had one photo on the stage, and you listened to the presenter in his or her way explain what it was, right?
Yep. Well, we have a little over 60 of these historic photographs on campus here at South. And some of them are from Douglas County Historical Society, and some of them are from the Durham. And when they were selected to be placed here, they chose images that were from South Omaha, and a lot of them are local businesses. Some of them don't exist anymore, but it is really interesting to see, students who have been doing research on these, to see how much they've learned about what exists today that, had those roots from the past. So there's, the descendants of the business owners. We're trying to track down a lot more of the content in them, but having the theater students and the writing students participate in that was a really great way to bring a little more creativity to
Absolutely,
the writing.
absolutely. Well, here's a challenge for both of you. Describe the 5 photos and what the story was about each photo.
Okay, I can describe the photos, and Scott might be able to give us a synopsis.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
The first one we saw was just called Sax Players, and it's 4 jazz players, probably from big band back in, maybe not as far back as the 20s. It could have been 30s. It was hard to identify it.
And Evelyn, our student, created a piece that actually took us to North Omaha and told the tale of a young jazz man getting his start in one of the clubs up there and kind of getting ready and then joining the quartet. So it was just kind of a pretty nice, but she painted a beautiful picture of the process.
I think she mentioned Preston Love too.
Yeah,
didn't she?
that's right.
Yeah. So that would be North and South
That's
Omaha,
right.
Omaha Jazz name. yeah.
Okay, second photo.
The second one was the inside of a Kresge's candy store.
And that was really
I remember
interesting.
those.
Yeah. What Britt Jorns did, a theater student, she actually took that and was inspired to take it into the future, where someone in kind of a dystopian society is traveling through Omaha and stumbles across one of these candy stores and takes refuge there. So I think it's really interesting that in the first 2, someone took us back and then someone took us forward.
Did it have a fountain, a soda fountain?
She described, she took pleasure in describing all the colored glass and the marble and the baubles and the beads and things like that.
All right.
Yeah.
What was the next one?
Well, that one didn't have a soda fountain, but the next one did.
It
was
did.
an ice cream bar. It's a very nondescript picture, so it could go anywhere.
And we don't know the year.
We don't know the
Of the
year.
photo?
It's kind of Art Deco looking, so probably the 20s or 30s.
And that was interesting because Brandy Workman was the writer of that. And she decided to do something of an interesting genre. She took it to kind of a film noir sense, where this seemingly quiet ice cream shop actually housed a very homicidal maniac, essentially.
Wow.
But it was very interesting. A different twist. As you read it, it shifts from this nice, quiet ice cream cone story to kind of a psychological thriller in a way.
Kind of hard to focus on the history of the photo when you get that kind of narration with it, right?
It's true. It's kind of interesting. But we did give them a lot of reins and kind of let them explore the genres that they enjoy the most.
The next one is a picture of the Omaha Fire Department from around 1910, and it's got a picture of an early automobile, but also horse and buggies for the water.
Wow.
And that, Jennifer Brown wrote a poem. Basically, it's called The Horse versus the Car. That just kind of, it's in praise of the horse, essentially, and all the hard work that they did.
Did we get through 5, or is that 4?
That was 4.
That was 4.
One more. The last one was...
We got 4 of the 5.
let's see.
It'll come to us before we're,
It's so
we're done.
fresh in my mind, yes.
You mentioned this was a funded via a grant from Douglas County. How do you think the presentation benefited the county? Obviously, it was a perfect fit for the fair.
It was, and Douglas County, in conjunction with the City of Omaha, they have a great historical grants program that kind of focuses in on the history of neighborhoods. So, and not only is it think benefiting our students and those who are here for the audience, but it's another way to get people more involved in looking at the history and the communities that surround our area.
Yeah. Where, you say there's more, how many photos in this collection?
Well, I know there's over 60. The count is funny because I'm looking at some duplicates right now, so it's 62 or 63.
Does the college own the collection?
We don't. They're just
Douglas County.
They're prints of the historic photographs,
Okay.
so they're just on.
Is there any place you can go to look at all 60 of them, or?
Yes, actually, we have the website that is now up and running. And if you go to Metro's website and in our search bar, you can search for In Pictures, stories from Omaha's historical photographs.
mccneb.edu.
Yes.
And you can find that as we just talked about. Did you figure out the last photo?
I did. The last photo is actually a really a lovely picture of young Czech dancers taken at the Sokol Hall.
Sokol Hall. I wonder if it's the same Sokol Hall as standing today.
It is.
It is, yeah.
And that Sarah Harper, a young student, she wrote kind of an essay about the way that we seek for perfection in art and performance, and that we always strive to preserve those moments the best ways that we can. So it's kind of an interesting. That's more of a creative nonfiction piece, but it's really different. So yeah, we have short stories, poems, and essays, all coming from this one exercise that we tried out.
Yeah. It's a great concept the way you guys did this, you know, involving the students and giving them an exercise in something kind of unusual.
Yes, yeah, it's always a great to try to, you know, when they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so we maybe made it 750 words for them this time.
Yeah, I mean, you get mesmerized looking at these photos.
Yes.
And then you take your eyes off the presenter, and it's kind of like going to a movie almost,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It was great. And how appropriate with an international fair to present some Omaha history, right?
Exactly, right. And that's what this whole area was about. With the stockyards being so close, this was about, this was Neighborhood of Immigrants with so many different stories and regions from where people came. So it's really exciting to kind of give a nod to that as well.
What did the students think of the experience?
I think they really enjoyed it. Well, I think, you know, it was nice to be asked because these students were all nominated essentially by creative writing students, creative writing instructors. So they felt just, you know, generous to be a part of it. They were happy to participate and really rose to the challenge as well. So I think that they benefited from it, you know, as much as we did.
Yeah, and we're so thankful to those sponsors of the City of Omaha and Douglas County because you know, we really like to encourage within the humanities that artists and performers get paid for what they do because that is a valuable contribution. So being able to have the grant money was wonderful, that these are working artists, and it was, I think, really respectful to be able to provide them some compensation for their creative efforts.
The people who took the photos, you mean, or?
No, the students who performed.
Oh, good.
Some of them are here maybe seeking a degree, but there's a lot of them who are just bettering their skills because they're already writers.
And obviously, you don't just sit down and write that in 10 minutes.
That's right. We gave them plenty of time. That's right.
Is this good? You think that the history of Omaha will continue to be presented via photographs in future international fairs, or is this a one-time deal?
Well, I mean, I always like to find new ways of telling stories. So I think that it's a great foundation, but it might be fun to take it into another direction, starting with the photos and then having something else, or but building that. But actually, the history of South Omaha is vibrant, and it does. You know, people long to tell those stories. I think people desire to.
And, you know, if you didn't get here for the fair, you really missed the experience of the international flavor. Not only in your presentation, but just everybody that attended. It was great. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
So there you have it. That's what happened at the 2016 MCC International Fair here at the Connector Building at the South Omaha campus. If you didn't have a chance to join us, that's okay. We had a great time. Just make plans to join us for next year's fair. For Metro and More, from the South Omaha campus, I'm Kent Pavelka. have comments or questions about the program, please email us at metrovision@mccneb.edu. Thanks for watching.
This has been a Metrovision production produced by Metropolitan Community College.